Welcome to the Camino Cafe podcast. I'm Lee Brennan, your host. Here's a little preview on what's coming up in today's very special episode.
Sat down in front of the apostle in Santiago, and I basically said, if you want me to do this, you'll show me a sign.
You walk your first Camino, and there's this cute Spanish guy
Yeah.
who suddenly enters your life.
It's the miracle of the Camino.
Well, pilgrims, we are in for a treat today. I am sitting here with Judy from Spanish Steps. You may have walked with her on a tour. She's been leading tours for quite some time. And I just got introduced to her by a mutual friend, and I found her story captivating, and I can't wait for her to share it here today with all of us. So, Judy, you started walking a while ago. So let's talk about, how did you find out about the Camino in the first place?
Well, I had a sort of a work partner, a gal by the name of Cookie de Funes, who's from Jaca. And she's, she lives right on the Camino. So one year her parents were coming over to visit, and she asked them to bring a guidebook for me because I'd already been traveling quite a bit, and she wanted me to go walk the Camino. And I thought, okay, well, so her parents came over, gave me a guidebook. I put it away, and then that was probably in 1989 or something like that. It was one of the very first modern Camino guidebooks. And then finally I decided I would go walk it. The whole year had already happened. That was in 1993. And so it kind of gave a little lift to the Camino. And I thought, okay, well, Cookie, I'm going to come over and walk it. Can you walk it with me? And she said, no, I can't. I just found a new job and I'm not going to be able to take off for a while. So she invited me to come stay at her house and do some hikes from there. So she drove me up to the Pyrenees, up to the top of the Pyrenees to Saint-Port, the Col de Saint-Port. And I just, took a couple days, walked back to Jaca, and then continued on from there. And I walked Jaca to Puente la Reina, where all the routes join.
Mm-hmm.
And I was completely alone. There was not one other pilgrim in sight. So I kind of thought, boy, when I get to Puente la Reina, if I don't meet anybody, I mean, this is kind of, you're out in a wheat field for 32 kilometers and, there's no bars. I mean, it's like, it was really rural and primitive. And I thought, not that I was looking for bars, but there's no life, it was just wheat fields, dusty wheat fields from Jaca. I mean, so you walk along the Rio Aragon and things like that. But, when you really got into it, it was like 28-kilometer days, 32-kilometer days, all alone. So I got to Puente la Reina, asked the monks at the albergue there if I could take a rest day because I wanted to go see Pamplona. So I packed up my pack, left it in the corner, went up to Pamplona, walked around for the day, came back, and there was this whole crew of pilgrims. And there were Brazilians and a man from New Zealand, a German guy, a couple of Spaniards and some French people. And I think we totaled about 10 or 12 people. And then this really handsome Spanish man. So that was my Camino family. So we took off. I didn't really know the protocol because I'd been by myself for so many days. So everybody, got up at the crack of dawn and started packing their backpacks, and, the walking sticks falling on the floor and the plastic bags and water running. And I thought, oh no, this is breaking my silence. What's going on here? So I just waited for everybody to clear out so I could go use the bathroom and just kind of take my time because I wasn't used to this sort of intense rush to get out of the albergue. And then I put my backpack on, started walking. And then throughout the day, I started meeting up with those people that were at the albergue the night before. And it was like, oh, weren't you there last night? And, it just kind of, you started meeting people, the people that were there. And then I got to Estella. I sat down in the plaza, had a few beers. I hadn't found the albergue yet. And then it started to get late. And I thought, oh, I better go find this place. And it was up on the top of the hill at that time, pretty far out of town, actually, kind of over by the bull ring. And I get there and everyone's like, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. We're going to dinner. So I didn't know that there was already this family. And I just threw my backpack on the bed and I said, I'm ready, let's go. So we went down to the plaza, and, Juan Carlos, who had already walked the Camino during the whole year, the year before, he took control and it was like, okay, we're going to order sausage and tortilla de patata. And, so he kind of took control and just started ordering all the food for everybody. And he asked me, tell him what this is and tell him what that is, because it was really a multilingual group and English was the common language. So suddenly I'm like thrown into this translator situation with this guy that I just met. And, I kind of think the rest is history, so we just started walking and we all walked to Santiago together, and it was a group of 10. There were a couple people that joined up, a few people that dropped out, but for the most part we were 10 people in those villages in 1994. That's it. Today, as you know, as you get closer to Santiago, there's from Saturday on, there's during the peak season, there's usually like 1,000 people in that section of the Camino. I mean, but if you go up to the norte or down to the Camino Portuguese or the one that comes up from Orense, I forget the name of that one. The Via de la Plata, the one that comes up from Sevilla and crosses over. Anyway, those are a lot quieter than the Sarria de Santiago trail for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, this is 94, so there really aren't any apps about the Camino, I'm
Oh, no.
imagining. Did you have a smartphone with you? Did you?
Oh, no, they didn't exist. I
Didn't
remember
exist.
the
Okay.
first time I saw a guy on a cell phone and I was like, wow, that's a novelty. So in 94, it wasn't there yet. I mean,
Gosh,
I didn't even have email, I mean, it wasn't, you went to a telephone, you went to a payphone and made your phone calls then. So there were no apps. I mean, today, oh my gosh, it's so different now. It's
so different.
so completely different.
Did you
Yeah.
take that guidebook that your friend had
I
given to you?
did. I carried that guidebook and I carried, the last chapter of James Michener's book, Iberia, is
Yeah.
about the Camino.
Yeah.
So I had that section of the book with me and
Nice.
I would read passages out of that. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Oh, and then that article from the Smithsonian Magazine, I think it was from 93, that told about the whole year and the Camino. I had that with me too. So I had some references.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later on, like, I don't know, when, 98 maybe, when cell phones, and you could just make a regular cell phone call, flip phones, and not even really a smartphone as we know today. So it was
Right.
quite yeah, it's what it was. That's what you did.
Yeah. Now, you at that time, so back at that time frame, you were living in the US, and what were
Mhm.
you doing? Like, what was going on in life before you decided to take this walk?
Well, I've been living in Aspen, Colorado for many, many decades now. And I used to run a catering company. So at that time, I was catering. So I worked winters and summers, and I had 2 months off in the spring and 2 months off in the fall. So what do? You travel. Everything shuts down in a ski resort. So you travel. So that's how I ended up on the Camino. It was during
Yeah.
my off season that I decided to go walk the Camino. And I just I would always travel. I traveled prior to that, South America and Nepal and all over the place. But the Camino, was a new journey, and thought I'd go do that. And then while I was on that trip, I did meet a man. He was German, and he had set out, this was in 94 on that trip. He'd set out from his house in Hamburg, Germany, which is northern Germany.
Yeah.
And he was already into his 5th month, I believe. And he
Wow.
said to me, it was kind of early on. I think it was maybe a little bit after Puente la Reina that I met him. He was a fast walker, so he just kind of walked by us. Um, he said, "Oh, I'm on my last month," and I looked at him and I said, "Oof, I'm on my first month." So he had been already walking for 5 months. And
Amazing.
that was winter. He left his house January 1st in Hamburg, Germany. So you can imagine what he went through. And he said the scariest part of his journey was running down the railroad track because a TGV was on his heels. He
Oh
saw it,
my.
he saw it coming. He thought, oh, it's, going to be 20 minutes before it gets here. And he had to run down that, it was like a bridge type track in order to get ahead of the TGV. So that was, so the stories you hear along the Camino are also become part of your Camino.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now you're walking that first Camino, you're based in
Mhm.
Aspen, you're getting ready
Mhm.
to come back because you've got your catering business to come to
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
starting up. But a little something happened on that Camino.
Right,
Changed your
right.
life.
So
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about
pretty,
Handsome
pretty much.
Spanish man.
Yeah, I met this Spanish guy, and you know, towards the end, we were just holding hands and singing and skipping along the trails and having a great old time. So when I got on that train in Santiago to take it to back to Jaca to see Cookie before coming back to the US, it was pretty sad. You know, I thought, oh, I'm never going to get to see this guy again. So, but we managed, you know, we managed. He ended up coming over in the fall. He came over to the US in the fall for a few months, and we did some road trips around out to, you know, the Grand Canyon in California and things like that from Colorado, camping and just exploring.
Wow.
And then I had it in me to walk that section. When I met the German man who had to run in front of the TGV, he had walked the Le Puy route. He somehow picked up the Le Puy route while he was coming down from Hamburg. And he said that that was a fabulous route. And, you know, that's another one I should check out. So the next year I decided to go back, and that was 95, and walk from Le Puy to Santiago. So that was like I don't know, like almost a 10-week, it was almost 10 weeks, I think, of hiking through the French countryside. And that was also very rural, and there was nobody around. Nobody until we reached Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And then
Mm.
we met some pilgrims. But it was like gray. It was springtime, so it could be a little bit gray. You know, things were just starting to bud, but it was rural France, which is fabulous. You know,
I have not walked that one yet, but I
oh,
really want
you
to.
have to. It's
So
really a beautiful route.
when you say we, so did Juan Carlos go with you?
Well, actually, no, two other friends. They were
Okay.
two other, he couldn't get away from work at that time. So he drove us up to the starting point, and you know, we said our goodbyes there in Le Puy, and then he joined us in Belorado that year. He came up and joined up with us in Belorado. So yeah, he did walk a little bit, but not the French, not in France.
Okay.
But yeah.
And you said he was a pilgrim before, so he had walked during the whole year, right? So an experienced pilgrim.
Yeah, he had walked the year before in 93. I think he started in Pamplona. Pamplona. I'm not sure if he started from Roncesvalles. He probably started from Roncesvalles. Why wouldn't you? So somewhere in Navarra, he started.
Okay. So, I know that you ended up in Spain. So take us there. How did the decision come about that you decided to pack up everything and move to Spain?
Well, I really didn't pack everything up. It's sort of been this split personality, if you will.
Ah,
I still come and go.
okay.
And it was because of him. I always thought, well, how can I keep myself in Spain? And you know, it was because of Juan Carlos. And then I thought, well, you know, maybe I can start bringing some groups over. I'll see if I
Mm.
can rally up a few friends and some people to come walk with me and be, you know, start a little tour company, but just enough to pay for my plane ticket. I didn't think it was ever going to blow up into a full-time job. Um, and so an old friend of mine gave me a list of travel editors from the different major newspapers around the country. And I sat down and I sent them a press release. And the first one to pick it up was the LA Times. And the first person to sign up for one of my trips was a travel writer from the Minneapolis Star Tribune. He
Wow.
wrote this fabulous article, and it just got syndicated. It kept coming out in different newspapers around the US, around Canada, Australia, around English speaking countries. I don't know if it ever came out in the UK, but I could tell where people were from. I mean, I could tell that it came out in a certain newspaper because suddenly I'd be getting all these phone calls before internet. Remember, I was getting phone calls from Kansas City, and I was getting phone calls from Los Angeles and San Francisco. And then years later, 2001, I think it was, the San Francisco Chronicle wanted to rerun that article. So they got a hold of me. They were doing a special in their magazine on pilgrimage, the San Francisco Chronicle magazine. And they kind of rewrote the story, and then it included my website and email address and 800 number and all that stuff. But and then it just took off. It just kept kind of percolating like that. So
How
I
did that
was,
feel? I mean, here you are, you've walked this pilgrimage because of this random idea
yeah,
of a friend of yours. Now you've met this guy. Now
yeah,
all of a sudden you're in all these newspapers.
yeah.
What
It's
was the
pretty
feeling?
overwhelming because I'm not seeking fame and fortune or anything like that. I just wanted to take people hiking, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think I told you when we were having a phone conversation that I sat down in front of the apostle in Santiago, and I basically said, if you want me to do this, you'll show me a sign. Because that was my third Camino at that point, and I said, you'll show me a sign if you want me to, you know, lead people on the Camino. And so that's when the article, that little press release came out in the LA Times. It came out like a month later. And then the phone started ringing. So I really attribute it to Santiago and also to the woman that wrote the article. I have to give her a
Yeah.
lot of credit for that
Yeah.
because it was a beautiful article. So that was, yeah, how do I feel about it? Yeah, I just got goosebumps from that because it was pretty
Okay, well,
moving to know that Santiago was by my side. You know, he was on his white horse and walking right beside me, you know? So that
clearing the
was,
obstacles and making it
yeah,
come to life. That must have been incredible hearing the phone ring,
yeah, it
right?
was. It was
We don't
because he,
have the same things really at this point. Like today, you would have been on Facebook, you would have been,
oh, yeah, yeah. You know, I was still running my catering company, which was called Lucia's Catering. So I'd be like, Lucia's Catering, Spanish Steps, you know, so I was like, oh, what do I do here, you know? So then I became, you know, we got really pretty, we got very busy. And so I just ended up letting the catering company go just because I wanted to focus on this more. So
So,
that's,
have you kept count of how many Caminos you've walked?
I think me personally, I've probably walked about 10.
Yeah.
But I've led, I don't know how many, maybe 500 groups. And I also have other people that assist me, that work with me, that have led a lot of groups too. So as far
I'm
as
sorry,
Spanish
did you
Steps
say
goes,
500?
yeah, probably about
How many
500 groups.
people? How many people are we talking then?
Oh, well, groups, you know, our groups are relatively small. There are maybe 10, you know, if it's a big group, it's usually a private group of like 20 people, of a big group of friends, church groups. Um, In a year, yeah, we can take about 500 people nowadays.
Wow, wow, wow. So, okay, so 500 you've led, let's say 10 went. Oh my
Well,
goodness.
maybe I'm getting the math wrong, but I'm thinking overall. I mean, that's me personally
Yeah,
because I have
yeah,
other people that work for
that's
me.
right.
So, you know, at the end of the year, when we look at spreadsheets and things like that, how many people signed up for trips with us? And these are not just, this is, it's just not the Camino Francés, it's the Camino
Right, right.
Portuguese, the Camino del Norte, the Via Francigena in Italy, the Camino in France. So, you know, it's just all these different routes that we have going on at one
Right.
time.
So how many a year would
So
you?
maybe 50 groups, let's say 50
Wow,
trips a year at like, say 10 people average, you know.
amazing. What is it like holding space for that many pilgrim experiences? Like when you look back and reflect, we're getting ready to start the Camino season, right? So
Yeah.
tours are starting back up, everything's going.
Yeah.
What is it like to lead something like that? Because I feel what my contribution with the podcast and hearing people say, "Oh, I heard this on an interview, and so I decided to walk." But you've been a space holder for thousands of people.
Yeah, it's been a lot. But you know, it's also really beautiful. I can't tell you how many people that I've become close with because of
Mhm.
this. I'm going to New York this weekend and I'm going to get together with some pilgrims. They're going to come and see me they're in Connecticut, but they're, you know, and they're really dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Um, so what does it feel like? You know, sometimes you have to sort of draw a line to detach yourself a little bit from, there's just so much energy coming at you. So you
Yep.
have to kind of know where your space is. And I'm sure you probably have that with teaching yoga too, because
Yes, yes, absolutely.
there's a lot of that. But
And
you
living in
also,
Santiago. In Santiago,
yeah,
I was in the destination city for 3 years, and yes, I
you
know
see
exactly
it.
what you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, but for the most part, you have to be present. It's just being present all the time and caring, giving. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like you're present. I feel like you really have to be in a space that offers assistance and guidance and not just turn left at the yellow arrow. You just have to, everybody is going through their own thing. So you sort of have to analyze and see what people are going through, you know?
Mm.
So, I mean, not everybody, there's a lot of people that just come and they're like, yeah, this is another hike that it's on our bucket list, which that term just bugs me sometimes. But,
Same.
um, but there's a lot of very, very experienced travelers and have done a lot of other spiritual walks around the world too. So they're sort of prepared for it. It might be, for some people, it might be easier. This might be an easier trek if they've gone on treks around Nepal and India, Bhutan. Those can be really, really physically challenging.
Right.
And on the Camino, it can be physically challenging for a lot of people, but we try to make it as comfortable for people as possible too. So, on our tours, we do have a support van. So
Yeah.
that can, we assist people in that too. If people want to, if they can't walk, we don't want to see anybody hurting, we don't want to hurt anybody, so
Right,
it's
right,
like,
right.
okay, if you need to jump in the van. But, we really try to nudge people to break through their limits, and see if they can break out of whatever it is that they're holding back maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have any funny stories from leading these groups or any stories that you feel like, wow, that was such an example of the power of the Camino?
I think for me personally, it's running back into people I've met on other Caminos over the years, whether I'm walking by myself or I'm guiding. And then, we do these lunches and things like that, out of kind of off a little bit off the Camino, out of the back of the van. And sometimes, if we have extra food or we just find somebody compatible. It's like, oh, come sit with us. Tell us your story, of that person that's walked from northern Germany or Holland or wherever. And, then like a year later, 2 years later, I run into them again, like almost in the same place. I can't say those are funny stories, but those are like, wow, how did that happen? How did we just happen to be at the same place at the same time? So those coincidental moments, I think, are really impactful for me. Funny stories, yeah, they're there, but I just can't think of any offhand right now. I can't. I'll see if while we're still talking if there's
Yeah, one
anything else
night.
that comes up.
Yeah. So, for you personally, what's your favorite path to walk? Do you have one?
I love the Camino in France. I think it's stunning. I really think the Le Puy to Saint Jean is gorgeous. I really do because it's a lot of dirt. You're not on pavement so much. Um, the Camino Primitivo is really nice. It's a lot more challenging, but I think there's a little bit more. There's quite a bit of pavement on that route. I find San Salvador from Leon to Oviedo is stunning, but those are really mountainous. The Primitivo and the San Salvador are really much more challenging. There's
Absolutely.
serious climbs involved in those, So
Wouldn't
you
recommend them to the first timer, right?
no, I mean
Unless they've hiked.
if you're an experienced mountain hiker, sure, absolutely. But yeah, those can be pretty daunting if you've never really hiked in the mountains before, but they're beautiful. Less infrastructure along the way, so you're not going to find, a lot of albergues and bars and things like that are open all the time. But, they're there, and you just have to be more prepared because it is a different Camino. Those are different Caminos. But favorite, I think the Norte is absolutely stunning. I think the Camino del Norte is beautiful. So, just kind of whatever you look for. But I think the classic Camino Frances is really special. That one's a really special one to my heart. So I really like that one. And the history and the monasteries and the churches that you see along the way on that route, it's really, you know, rich in spirituality and religion and art. And it's nice.
Yeah. So when you look back, like you've been walking for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, we can't change the pace of technology and all the things that have happened. But when you look back and you think, wow, what has changed? What's your observation of the differences between walking in 94 to walking now?
Um, it is definitely, there's a lot more people out there, of course. But I think you get into your own little niche while you're walking and you can still have that same experience. Yeah, the technology, there's a lot more infrastructure. When I think of the Camino Frances, you know, there's an albergue every 5 kilometers almost, depending. But I just think it's easier. It's a lot easier now for people to just let go and walk it. You don't have to worry so much. Back then, you really had to carry a lot of water. Here's a funny story. If you were talking about
Yeah.
funny stories, speaking of water, I actually carried a water filter pump with me. And Juan Carlos is like, what do you need this for? And so I we stayed in this albergue that was under construction, and I left it in the bathroom, kind of hanging over a door to sort of dry out overnight to kind of clean it.
Yeah.
And that door locked automatically, and I didn't have a key to get back in there to get this. It's like a Catadine water filter, which was not cheap. It was an expensive one back then. There's cheaper systems now, but so I ran over to the bar, the only bar in the village that, you know, it was a miracle that they opened at 7 o'clock because back then the bars didn't open until 9. So you
Yeah.
couldn't get a coffee until 9. And I just wrote out Cookie's address and said, if you happen to find this water filter, can you send it to my friend in the Pyrenees? And she got she
You're
got it in
kidding
the
me.
mail. They sent it to her, this bar that, the guy's looking at me like, no, we're not going to do that. But they sent it to Cookie in the Pyrenees. And her
Oh,
family they were military. Jaca's known for being a big military base. And
okay.
even though her dad had retired, a long time ago, they get this funny object in the mail. And they had to bring it in to have it like bomb detected because they thought maybe it was, had something, because he was like a high up official in the military. So they had to go and get this. I mean, that's not a really funny story, but it was just kind of a bizarre story about, we didn't have technology. I couldn't communicate with these people. I just scribbled out on a napkin her address, and then it was like suddenly a bomb alert, So it's kind of an odd story. Maybe not really a funny story, but yeah.
Well, Camino miracle that you would get that return. Really?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
chances of that are pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look back now and you think, I mean, obviously this changed your life tremendously
Yeah.
in
Talk about
this,
life changing.
right?
Yeah.
What do you think's been the most profound impacts on you as a person? Because obviously you ended up changing, you kind of live in both places, you fell in love, but when you look at yourself as a person, what's been most profound for you?
I feel a lot of gratitude for the people that have helped me on this journey. I couldn't have done what I've done without the aid of some really special people that are part of my team.
Yeah.
And there's no way. There's no way. I have all these really great, very, very special people that have been with me for a long time on this journey, and I really owe it to them.
Yeah.
It's them, not me. It's them. So it's the gratitude that I have towards my team, my personal Camino family. So, and
Yeah.
my husband, of course, he's been at my side all this time too. So
Yeah.
that's probably the most profound thing is I just feel really just kind of embraced by a good team of people. So that's what I can take away from it.
Now you split your time right now, so let everybody know a little bit about your hotel. It looks so beautiful. I wish I had known
Right,
about it when I
right,
was
right.
in Santiago and visited Asturias.
Well, my time is split between Aspen, Colorado, where I'm at right now, and Asturias. And Juan Carlos and I had looked on the Camino for a long time because we thought of opening up a retreat center on the Camino. But then as we got into it more, I decided I didn't want, we wanted to open a hotel slash, B&B slash retreat center. We didn't want the business of people coming and leaving,
Mm,
coming just for one night and leaving. We
yeah.
just saw that as a big laundry
Hmm.
debacle, you know, gotta do the laundry, gotta do the laundry. So we, we started looking outside of the Camino, and we were looking on the Camino del Norte because I thought, oh my gosh, you know, you have the beautiful Asturian mountains, and then you have the beaches of Asturias. But then I went a little bit inland from the sea, about an hour's drive from the ocean, to this national park that we're in called the Ubiñas de la Mesa, which is kind of, if you're walking the Camino San Salvador and you go through Pola de Lena, that's the closest Camino town to our hotel. And we decided just to base ourselves. We bought an old farmhouse, you know, we converted an old farmhouse, not recommended. As far as the job goes, it was
Yeah.
really, really difficult.
Yes.
Um, you know, it was an old stone farmhouse that we bought, and then we built two other buildings on the property. So it was really very difficult. But Juan Carlos kept saying, you know, just think of Santiago. He'll get us there. He'll get us there. You know, there's obstacles along the way, but he's going to get us there. So, um, and then we just kind of settled in there. So it's our home in Spain, and we also offer retreats and workshops. And we don't do very many just one night stands as far as people coming for the night, but
Yeah.
you know, we will depending on, you know, if we have availability. But we uh, we just base ourselves there in this just a gorgeous, gorgeous area. And just down below us is a long distance walking trail called the Senda del Oso, the Bear Trail, and that
Mm.
goes from pretty much our house all the way to Oviedo.
Oh,
So,
lovely.
and then there's also another long distance walking trail that goes right by our house as well, called the Camino Real de las Reliquias. So it's the Relics Trail. So
Mm.
evidently it's the GR 207. I guess they would take relics from Toledo to Astorga and then up through the mountains, kind of north of Astorga, just due north of Astorga. There's an old Roman road that kind of climbs up and then drops down into our valley and then continues on into Oviedo. So I've done most of that trail, and it's beautiful. There's no albergues or anything along that,
Right.
but it is it's not a pilgrimage road, but it was a protected road because they moved relics.
Mm.
So just out our kitchen window, our dining room window rather, is like a watchtower that was probably from the 8th or 9th century. So that's right there as a one of the leftovers of that.
I wonder how many times you get the question of, "Oh, you don't live in southern Spain where it's sunny? Why did
Yeah.
you pick northern Spain?"
Because of the mountains. Because of the mountains. Juan Carlos is from Valladolid, which is like 3 hours north of Madrid, and it's really flat, kind of Meseta-like. And I was just yearning for the mountains. I'm a mountain girl, and we started looking around. Um, we started looking in Cantabria, Galicia, and then finally I found a house in Asturias that was reasonably priced, but it was a rundown farmhouse, stone farmhouse. So, you know, it took some blood, sweat, and tears to bring it up to a livable condition. So,
Yeah, so let's talk about that. As pilgrims, we both know, maybe ourselves or someone we've walked with, how many times do you pass a place that, is for sale, and all of a sudden the dream starts coming up like, well, I could own an albergue, or
right,
um,
right.
so let's talk a little bit about that to the folks that maybe are considering that. What do you wish you had known before you bought that farm?
Well, I feel like I was at a real advantage because Juan Carlos is Spanish. And what I see with people trying to make a major investment like this is it's a dream. And it's kind of, I hate to say it like this, but it's kind of an unrealistic dream because most of the people that have this dream do not speak Spanish. They don't have like a rooted um, somebody that can really help them go through the stages of what it takes with the bureaucratic part of it all. That is not easy. And Juan Carlos was there, and he had he had experience. He knew the right people to talk to as far as government, where to go and get paperwork done and things like that. So I really feel like, if it's just like a little dream of yours and you don't speak Spanish, I think you really need to speak Spanish fluently in order to do something like this. I see people around us that are not opening albergues, but they just have settled there, and bought an old stone farmhouse, and they're trying to restore it, and they struggle. They struggle because they don't speak Spanish. They had the money to buy it. That's the easy part, I think, is coming up with the money to buy it, because some of those places are pretty cheap. I think
Yeah.
nowadays, if it's right on the Camino, the prices are more inflated, but than it was back then. But there are still places in Spain where you can find very economical economical buildings to convert into some kind of a business or your own home. But I think not speaking the language is a big no for starters.
I think one thing that I felt when I walked my first Camino is I gained a sense of false confidence,
Yeah,
because it seemed like I could get by without
right,
Spanish, right? Now reflecting back, I realize, well, that's because I was on the most popular route
right,
and everybody kind of knew what I was going to do. I was going to order a coffee, I was going to get
right.
a quesadilla, like
You're
it,
gonna find the bathroom. Yeah,
right. And I was like, how hard could it be?
right, right.
I did that.
Yeah.
Turns out it's a little more challenging. So let's talk about language can be a challenge. What other challenges have you faced and being an American but living in Spain?
Again, because I have the support of my husband, it's been pretty easy because he's taken care of a lot of that aspect of owning a business, buying a building, and everything like that. But I think just as a person, I think the hardest part is becoming part of the community. And it's
Mhm.
taken me a long time to become part of my local community.
And you
So
you
just,
speak fluent Spanish.
yeah, my Spanish is okay after all these years.
Yeah.
But it's just, it was, yeah, there's the expat community, but
Hmm.
then the local community. And my husband's in the local community. So that's my ticket to being part of that. But I think if he wasn't around, I probably wouldn't really have that much of a social life with the locals. I do have a very strong social life with the locals, but prior to that, and us moving to a new place, it was a little bit lonely. So I think people moving to, unless you're moving to downtown Benidorm, which is a lot of foreigners, then you might struggle a little bit with incorporating into the
Yeah.
social life. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, because I think we can say that, but like, what's the reality of that look like? Because I've told that to some folks, like, you
Yeah.
have to be ready to spend a lot of time on your own. Why is that? And what's it feel like as the person who's experiencing that?
Well, I think the Spaniards have a really tight family commitment.
Mhm.
So they're really family bound more than I think us here in America. In America, everyone picks up and leaves their family at an early age. I did. I
Yeah.
did. I moved from New York to Colorado at a very young age. And just kind of I think there's just stronger family values there, I think.
Mhm.
And they stick together and they don't go far. They stick together. So, and that was your experience in Santiago, huh? Which
Yeah.
is such a well, I can't say it's a huge cosmopolitan city, but there's certainly a lot of expats that live there.
Yeah, there are, well, I wouldn't say as many as like Benidorm or something like that.
Right, right, right.
So it's a small community of English speaking expats that are there. But the folks that grew up in Santiago, they're quite tight. They've lived
Oh
their
yeah.
whole lives, and for them, it's a small town.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
when I walk around with one of my friends who grew up there and owns a cafe there now, he literally knows everyone we're
yeah,
passing that
yeah.
lives there.
That's
Now,
great.
Santiago is a little strange in that it's the destination city, not just for the Camino, but also, a lot of Spanish folks just want to go there to see the cathedral. It's become also the home of business conferences and different things. So there's always tourists in
Right.
Santiago. So, they wouldn't know them, but, as far as the local community, it's very small. And like you're saying, my experience was, they already had all their friends growing up. They went to
Yeah.
university together as well at
Right.
Santiago. And the families are so tight that they already have their Sunday family meals together. They don't really need extra expats. They're friendly to us, and certainly you do eventually become friends with some people. But I think it's hard to break into that.
Yeah.
if your Spanish isn't very strong, even impossible at that point, right? Because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have so much to offer or even understand at a meal. So yeah, I even had it there. I lived in Robinall for a short period of time, which was a very small
Oh,
village.
yeah.
Um, I think there was one person at the time who spoke a little bit of Spanish or a little bit of English. And so, that was extremely difficult. At least in Santiago, I had a lot of English speakers coming to visit, right? And like all the world, I think there is more and more English being spoken in larger cities, but that is not the case if you buy a little farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere on the Camino. That village is going to be very Spanish oriented, right? Like people
Yeah,
cannot
yeah.
speak English at all.
Yeah, no, you'll have a wave, the wave of foreigners walking through that you can talk to. But as far as incorporating, just being a part of that village, it would be difficult, I think. So I think that's something really to take into account if you're a foreigner buying in a Spanish village. The Camino, you'll have definitely a lot more activity, but,
But they come and
outside of
go.
that, but they come and go. Yeah, I oftentimes, it might sound a little derogatory, but on the Camino, the people that I've known all these years, I kind of call them my friends for 5 minutes because I come in and we sit and we chat and we catch up and, how's the granddaughter? And, I've
Mhm.
watched these families from death to birth, with the grandfather who served me a coffee back in 1994 is no longer here, but yet there's lots of grandchildren running around,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I've kind of seen these families, you know, transition, so for me it's great, and they appreciate me coming in because I also think yeah, I'm a familiar face to them,
Yeah.
because they see all these strangers, then suddenly I come in, it's like, oh, it's you, the La Americana, you know.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, no, it is, it's really nice to have that and have connections. For me on the Camino anyway, it's nice to have those connections because then they can, if I need some help,
Yeah.
if the van breaks down or somebody really gets lost or they need to go see a doctor or something, I have connections, and that's really nice too. So
Yeah.
that's a big help for me. Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're contemplating moving, would you suggest a split of time like that like you've done? Would you suggest to split or to just go for it and
Oh yeah.
full
I don't
time?
think you want to try it out. What I suggest is you go over, you rent a place. If there's a village that really resonates with you, try to rent first, and then really be looking around for what you want to do. Rent, maybe buy something, you can still find things that are really affordable. Slowly fix it up, but try to become part of that village. And if you don't, then you can sell it and move back home. But I wouldn't sell my home. Maybe if you don't have a home and you're just out of college or whatever, and you want to do something like this, then sure, give it a try. But I think that's the hardest part, is maybe the not really becoming 100% involved with the village. I
Right.
mean, there are people that have, for
Yeah.
sure.
Sure.
Absolutely, for sure. But
Right.
that's what
That's
I've noticed over
probably
the years.
fewer than the people that actually end up staying long term and making that dream turn into a reality, right? And so
Yeah,
your advice and what I'm hearing is, yeah, go and try it, rent, check
definitely.
out the place, but keep a place back in the US because you might
Right,
end up wanting to return.
right.
Don't keep that place, then you're starting over again in the US.
Exactly, exactly. And I know of people that have moved over and then thought that was it and then ended up moving back. So I think, don't give it all up just with this pipe dream that you might have. So I
Yeah.
think, you know, study it a little bit, and that would be renting and checking out different areas. If that first place doesn't resonate with you, then just move on and go someplace else,
Yeah.
because I think the quality of life there is fabulous in Spain. It really is. I
Yeah.
think, it's so much, the food, the wine, it's just so much more affordable. Public transportation is fabulous. Um, again, you can buy something that's not that expensive, but you will have the paperwork and all the legal hoops to jump through. But it's, you can do it. There's lawyers, bilingual lawyers that can assist in helping you along the way. So, there's ways to do it. There's ways to
Yeah.
do it. Again, I was lucky because I had a Spaniard in my life that did most of the work for me. He did the red tape. So
That sounds absolutely dreamy, let me tell you. I
yeah,
can
yeah,
imagine how different my experience would have been had I been married to somebody that was Spanish. The other thing, I think for everyone to check out is their particular own tax situation because that can impact you differently depending on how your finances are. So
yeah.
I think, sometimes we go with this dream, but there's a lot of research that needs to be done. And that's not just taking the word of somebody you see on Facebook, like really getting information from experts, right? And really talk
Yeah.
to people. I think the things you're talking about, um, feeling isolated in a village, that's a real thing. And you got to really decide if you can do that because that comes with the dream.
Well, and these villages, a lot of them just close up really early. So, if you're used to going out and, you know, lively dinners and things like that, you might not find it. So, yeah, I think you really do have to rent something before you buy and settle in that certain place. So, and
So,
learn the language, learn the language.
learn the language. Very sound advice. Okay, Judy. So you walk your first Camino, and there's this cute Spanish guy
Yeah.
who suddenly enters your life. Tell us about the first time you laid eyes on Juan Carlos.
So I was checking back into the albergue in Puente la Reina because I'd taken a rest day there and went up to Pamplona to visit Pamplona and then came back that evening and there was like this whole new wave of pilgrims there. The night before it was a bunch of bicyclists from France. So the next day, so I didn't really get to meet them at all. I was exhausted and it was bedtime, so I just went to bed. But then the next day when I came back at an early enough hour, and there were people milling about the albergue and people from all over the world. And I just thought, okay, this is kind of nice. And they were all hikers. They were pilgrims on foot. And it's getting kind of late. Oh, I know. This is the day that Jackie O died. I'll never forget that. This
Ooh.
was
Oh,
when
wow.
yeah, so I was reading the news. I was over at the bar next door reading the newspapers and just kind of catching up and reminiscing. And then I came back in, and the pilgrims were still sitting around the general dining room table there at that albergue when this guy pops his head out and looks straight at me and says, "Will you keep it down out there? We're trying to sleep in here," because it was just, a thin door right off where the bunk beds were.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, sure." And he's like, "Yeah, and lock the door." And I thought, okay, and I felt like it was totally being directed at me. And really cute guy, but I just felt like, well, whatever. So that was my first impression of him. But I
That
thought
was
he
the
was
first time.
but I thought he was awfully cute. So the next day, everybody left the albergue except me. I stayed in bed because there was just too much activity. Everybody was packing, and I wasn't used to that. I was by myself. I'd been by myself for 7 days from Hakka. And I just thought, okay, just take your time and keep your same rhythm. There's no hurry. Puente to Estella is like 25 kilometers. You got this, no big deal. And so when I get to Estella and finally find the albergue, all the pilgrims were waiting for me to go to dinner. So I just kind of threw my backpack down on the bed and said, "Come on, let's go." And then, oh, wait, let's backtrack just a little bit. While I was walking up that steep hill to get to the albergue, there was a guy pushing somebody in a wheelchair up that hill. And I thought to myself, oh, that guy's really cute, you know? And so I was like, "Dónde está el albergue?" And he said, "Just a minute, just 1 minute, please." So we get to the top of the hill, and then he says goodbye to the guy in the wheelchair. And this man says, "I'll walk you over there." Well, it was Juan Carlos, the guy that had kind of
Oh,
told me to quiet down the night before. So he walked me to the albergue, and then everybody was like, "Where have you been? We're going to dinner." So that's kind of how it all started. Me and the whole gang, there was like 10 of us, went out for dinner, and Juan Carlos was telling everybody what was on the menu, and I was having to translate for those that didn't speak Spanish. So
mm,
that's kind of how we sort of hit it off, as far as just starting a conversation and starting a friendship. And then we walked the whole thing together. We walked from Puente la Reina to Santiago together, and that was it. That was history.
really?
And
From that moment?
yeah, we were pretty tight pilgrims the whole way. And then And then he came over to the US a few months later, and I came back to Spain again in the spring. And, it's just been, I've been like this ping pong ball going from one country to another. But he's been in my life ever since. So that's my,
Ever since when you left Santiago that first time, did you think, well, oh, that was a Camino love, or, I'll
yeah,
never see
of
him
course.
again? And then all
Yeah,
of a sudden he comes to the US.
yeah, right. So we kept in touch, and this was, letters and telephone calls, so
Romantic.
yeah, yeah. And then fax machines started coming in, so I was able to send a few faxes every now and then. But this is all before our cell phones, and
Love it.
yeah, I mean, we were able to talk on the phone, but back then you didn't really,
It
it's
was
like, oh, an
expensive, I think,
international
back then,
call.
right? It was
Sorry.
expensive to have an international
That's just it. And international calls are super expensive, and this is before internet and WhatsApp and all that. So it was really. I still have a lot of those letters that we would write to each other. He was such a good letter writer. It was really nice to get those letters, and and then eventually, spending so much time together and starting this business, it was like I thought to myself, we have to have our own little hotel. Let's open up a little boutique hotel. So we did that, and
Yeah.
that's what we've been doing ever since. So plus
Oh,
the tours. So we do
yeah.
both.
30 years together. That's quite an
Kind of a
achievement these
kind
days.
of a miracle. It's a miracle of the Camino.
It is
Another
a miracle, the
miracle.
Camino.
Yeah.
Has anyone else fallen in love and gotten married that you guys have walked with?
Well, a number of my guides, a number of the people that work for me, they met their partners on the Camino as well.
Really?
So yeah, like Virginio, he leads all my tours in Italy now. He worked for me here. He met his German bride on the Camino. She stopped in to fill her water bottle and never left. And that was in Arroyo Sambol, just before Ontanas. And Raquel met her partner on the Camino. They met up somewhere in the Meseta and then didn't see each other again until Santiago. And they were both walking south. She's from Porto and he's from the US. So he was going to go to Lisbon and she was just going to walk home to Porto. And they met up and they're still together. So
How many years has that been, would you say?
I think those guys have been together probably about 8 years.
Wow.
And Virginia and Donna have been together probably about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
So
is possible to fall in love on the Camino. You never
yeah.
know who
Yeah.
you're going to meet, right?
There's people out there that meet their partners on the Camino for sure. I think it's because you just kind of let your hair down. You're in a safe space.
Mhm.
You just you're open. You're open. The Camino really opens you up and
Yeah.
opens your heart up. So I think it really is a good place to, I mean, don't go looking for it, but if it happens to come by, then of course embrace it.
I love it. If it happens to
Yeah.
I embrace it. Lovely. So what's next? What's next for Judy, the pilgrim of 30 years? And
Yeah, well, I'm starting to step back a little bit because I have such a great team. Starting to step back, trying to transfer over a lot of the responsibility just because I'm kind of at the point in my life where all I want to do is put a backpack on and go hiking.
mm,
And I feel like, all these years, even though I've been able to do quite a bit of that, I just want to I just want to go on a long, long walk and not have to be in front of a computer ever again. No, just kidding.
it
Just
sounds
kidding
dreamy.
about that.
Dreamy.
It-
I will include links to the hotel as well as
okay.
Spanish Steps so people can see what kind of tours you're doing coming up. But the hotel, oh my goodness, I've combed through your
Yeah.
entire website and everything looks gorgeous. I cannot wait to come and visit you the next time.
Well, anytime,
Hey,
anytime. We've got 8 rooms, so we'll put your name on one of them. So
lovely, lovely. Well, thank you for sharing your story. It's warmed my heart.
good, good. And when's your next Camino?
October.
Oh, great.
Judy, I'm just so thrilled to have you on the show today and
Well, I
have met.
appreciate it. It's been great being here.
Well, thank you. And congratulations on your body of work and being a part of the Camino. And just so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And you too. What a great
Thank you.
podcast you have.
Well, Pilgrims, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, may the light in your pilgrim heart keep burning strong. Ciao.